Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here today to showcase Makivik Corporation, which is the birthright organization established in 1975 to represent Nunavik Inuit ethnic rights, and that was pursuant to the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement, the first modern land claim agreement in Canada. By way of introduction and background for those that perhaps don't know me, my name is Stas Olpinski. I'm the director of the Resource Development Department at Makivik Corporation, and it's been my privilege to work for Makivik for the past 31 years. In this capacity, I oversee the department responsible for the environment and renewable resources in Nunavik, which includes a state-of-the-art research center in Kuujjuaq. Our dedicated staff of 13 employees includes a range of personnel from wildlife technicians to biologists to a toxicologist, all who actually implement the research studies meeting the priorities of Nunavik Inuit. These studies are often conducted in collaboration with provincial and federal agencies, including Quebec, MAPAC, the Environment Canada, and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, amongst others. For those of you presently unfamiliar with the area, Nunavik is the homeland of the Nunavik Inuit, located in northern Quebec, Canada, and the surrounding offshore. The total surface area is approximately 507,000 kilometers squared, representing approximately 1/3 of the land base in the province of Quebec. The 12,000 some Inuit in Nunavik comprise over 90% of the resident population. The balance of inhabitants are people of various ethnicities employed for differing periods by various local and regional organizations. The people live in 14 communities spread along the coast, and the region is only accessible by air or during the open water season by sea. No roads nor railways connect to the region, a reality which obviously significantly increases the cost of living. The largest community, with a population of 2,375 inhabitants, is Kuujjuaq, the administrative center of the region, where Makivik has its principal corporate office and where the Kativik regional government equally has its head office. Makivik, which in Inuktitut means to rise up, is a fitting name for an organization mandated to protect the Nunavik Inuits' rights, interests, and financial compensation provided by the aforementioned James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement. Although not-for-profit, the corporation's various mandates range from owning and operating large profitable business enterprises and generating jobs, to social economic development, improving housing conditions, to protection of the Inuit language, culture, and natural environment. Before I elaborate on these mandates, I believe it is important that people understand the context of today based on what was present in the past. Before signing of the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement, Inuit lived in matchbox houses previously provided by government. These accommodations were approximately 10 by 20 feet in dimension and housed up to 10 people at a time. Running water, let alone hot water, was non-existent. You had a plastic tank into which water was delivered by a truck. The toilet, the infamous honey bucket, comprised a plastic pail lined with a garbage bag, which was removed, left outside the house, and picked up to be taken to the dump, hopefully before the dogs ripped the contents open. Neither hospitals nor nursing stations were available. Whatever medical treatment was available was provided by the White Hudson Bay manager or perhaps the school teacher. If seriously ill, particularly those afflicted with tuberculosis, patients were sent by ship to sanatoria in the south, many dying far from home or returning north after many years, having lost language, hope, and cultural identity. The federal objective of grouping Inuit into localized communities to more easily provide services and to administer the region was perhaps well-intentioned, but led to problems such as those faced by children sent to the various boarding schools at great distance from their homes, where many students face terrible physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. In another example, people's lives were completely disrupted and hunters' abilities to provide food for their families was critically impacted by the slaughter of dog teams used for transportation by Inuit and to hunt the various animals on which people relied for their daily food intake. With dogs slaughtered, the inability to fulfill the pivotal role of hunter basically emasculated proud men and led to alcohol abuse and the downward spiral of other abuses, ostensibly done by police and possibly other southern representatives of government at the time to prevent dogs from attacking people. This dog slaughter was really done to limit people's travel and autonomy and to keep them localized in communities and reliant on the services provided therein. In light of this history, accomplishments achieved by Makivik to date may seem astounding. They are, however, directly linked to Inuit identity, exemplified by the very characteristics their ancestors developed over the millennia they have inhabited the Arctic. These were forged within the crucible of the harsh conditions they had to endure to survive within the land they called home. These include tenacity, self-reliance, flexibility, innovation, endurance, and adaptability. These are the commonalities that bind the Pan-Arctic Inuit family as one. Inuit share the reliance on their wildlife resources on which they depend for country food, which are obtained regularly from the land, water, and air in the homeland, collectively called Inuit Nunanga. In particular, Inuit value the knowledge and wisdom of their elders who have learned from their forebears, and in so doing have acquired the skills necessary to survive despite many hardships endured. It has been primarily an oral tradition, and in order to preserve this knowledge for future generations of Inuit, Makivik took steps initially through the land use and ecological database study to interview elders and establish both a cartographic and written rendition of the interviews. These data and those obtained from Inuit knowledge holders today comprise a critical source of information that underpin wildlife research and management decisions aimed at ensuring the continued sustainable harvest of those resources. They are moreover a critical source of knowledge for education purposes in order that Inuit youth will have a reference point to learn from. Above all, one characteristic that stands out is the notion of sharing with each other. This no doubt originated and was reinforced throughout the millennia. Nunavummiut inhabited the Arctic to ensure the collective survival of small family units that occupied specific sites at different seasons. By doing this, their predecessors strived to obtain sufficient food while hunting and gathering from an uncertain resource base. Sharing of food resources and hunting equipment ensured that all would benefit from the success of an individual hunter with a certitude would be reciprocated on other occasions. On reflection, it appears to me absolutely incomprehensible that despite damming of the La Grande River to build the massive hydroelectric development which provides electricity to southern Quebec, or indeed further still to the US's New England states, electricity in Nunavut's communities is provided by fossil-fueled generator plants. These generators experience common brownouts, if not blackouts. They contribute to the carbon output burden driving climate change through emissions. They prevent the ability to provide air conditioning to homes and offices suffering rising summer temperatures, and impose limitations on housing size and design because electric heating cannot be utilized. I must raise the important question: why has a branch electrical line not been constructed, and why are Nunavik Inuit not connected to the Hydro-Quebec grid or some other form of clean energy? The importance of this issue is highlighted by spills of diesel fuel at hydroelectric plants in both Ivuivik and Inuktitut, totaling over 27,000 liters, for example. Additionally, a spill of approximately 5,000 liters of diesel fuel occurred in Sudley during a ship-to-shore transfer operation where the hose was accidentally severed by the ship's propeller. All of these spills are a result of Nunavik communities being handcuffed to this source of energy without the option of electricity being produced through other options such as wind, sun, or tidal bores. Despite this, and due in great part to the various characteristics of Nunavummiut which I referred to previously, Inuit have managed to prosper. Makivik Corporation, through the wisdom of its past and present leaders, has established an enviable record regarding its accomplishments on behalf of Nunavimut. That is not to say that the cost of living and prices of fuel, food, and other essentials are not prohibitive. Nor does it mean that Nunavimut have sufficient social housing to accommodate the burgeoning population, which is skewed with an enormous 62.3% of the population being under the age of 29. By comparison, the pooled demography of Quebec shows 35% of the population under age 29, with 65% over the age of 30. This age structure, dramatically skewed to youth in Nunavik, demands special requirements to be considered, particularly regarding education, housing, and employment. Nunavik is, however, at the forefront in the retaining of its language, with 99% of the population conversant in Inuktitut by comparison, with 89% for Nunavut, 25% for Nunatsiavut, and 20% for the Inuvialuit, the three other Inuit land claim regions in Canada. Makivik's successes demonstrate the extent that modern Aboriginal treaties or land claim agreements can benefit both governments and Inuit. These agreements must, however, be fair to all parties, and in particular to Inuit who, by comparison with government, have a lesser capacity and resources in regards to the negotiating treaties. Makivik is also signatory to the Nunavik Inuit Land Claims Agreement, which Alan referred to, which has been in effect since 2008. Through this agreement, Makivik, on behalf of Nunavimut, owns 80% of all the islands, including both surface and subsurface rights in the Nunavik Marine region, totaling some 5,300 square kilometers. Also, institutions of public government with decision-making authority, which my colleagues will be speaking to much more in detail shortly, have been established to address wildlife, land management, and development impact issues. Certainty of rights is provided using a non-assertion model instead of the surrender and the extinguishment model found under the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement. In 2002, Makivik also negotiated and signed a partnership agreement on economic and community development in Nunavik, commonly called the Sanakutik Agreement. This agreement was the beginning of a new relationship with the Quebec government and provides a baseline and a mechanism for economic development and equally addresses important social issues. In the 40 years since the establishment of Makivik Corporation, Nunavik Inuit have seen significant growth of their stake in relevant business opportunities in their region, as well as throughout the North. Makivik owns businesses with activities in a variety of fields, including two successful airline companies, First Air and Air Inuit. In the case of Air Inuit, it provides services within the Nunavik region, whereas First Air, which is the third largest airline in Canada, provides service both to strategic locations in Nunavik as well as elsewhere in the Canadian Arctic. Over the preceding 35 years, Makivik has established a solid reputation in the northern fishing industry. It has successfully researched and developed a viable shrimp fishery in Hudson Strait and Davis Strait. Makivik is full owner of a license that operates in partnership with Newfound Resources, a Newfoundland-based company, and also through Unak Fishery. It shares a shrimp license with Hikiktalo Corporation. Over the years, it has trained Inuit crews and developed partnerships with major national and international fishing companies. Makivik also owns Kadlutik Enterprises, a fuel distribution company, Nunavik Creations, an Inuit clothing designer and manufacturer, Nunavik Geomatics, a consulting firm which focuses on geomatic products, Kautak Construction, a construction company specializing in civil and residential housing projects. Nunavik Inuit are no stranger to development. They have come a long way in the 40 years since their establishment of the JBA, through the JBNQA. They are open to development, however, have specific conditions that must be met. Foremost, they want to be part of this development from the onset, to control its pace and scope in their homeland. They want to benefit socially and economically from it while ensuring their traditional lifestyle, culture, and reliance on the environment and wildlife resources are protected. The aforementioned Nunavik Research Centre conducts various wildlife research and environmental monitoring within the region and plays a key role in ensuring the quality of country food. The Nunavik Research Centre leads a number of initiatives including trichinella monitoring and prevention, fish population monitoring, diagnosis of disease, animals and fish, beluga sampling programs, etc. The Centre also collaborates or provides logistical support for a multitude of other government, industry or university-led initiatives. These include wildlife population surveys, environmental sampling collection of baseline data, rabies testing, heavy metal and contaminant monitoring, among many others. The importance and relevance of developing local expertise in wildlife research and monitoring is only expected to grow as climate change and development impacts continue to be felt in the region. In Quebec, the re-emergence of the Plan Nord is a development initiative to exploit mineral and other resources in the northern regions of Quebec. Establishment of the Société du Plan Nord with a board of directors to whom I report, Adami de l'Ilalakou, is a member, are testimony, I believe, to Quebec's commitment to implementing its development objectives. That said, I must also state that I'm concerned and disappointed in recent pan-ministerial budget cuts that have been severely impacted in the ability of several departments, and in particular the Ministère Forêt Faune et Parcs, with which I have specific dealings with on a regular basis, to implement their mandate as regards research and management of wildlife resources in Nunavik. Concurrently, huge investments in infrastructure to support such projects contemplated under the Plan Nord, such as railways and deepwater ports, are being discussed. Quebec has also questioned its territorial boundaries established by the federal government in the 1912 Boundaries Extension Act. This is in part related to the construction of marine infrastructure and the conundrum of which jurisdiction such a structure would fall under, given the current geopolitical boundaries defined. Makivik has responded by producing its own vision for development in the region called Pagmasimauti, to set out a collective and comprehensive vision for our future in all sectors of our lives: environment and land, health, education, language, culture, identity, and other parameters. All Nunavik communities and relevant organizations were consulted. The principles of this development will include respect for legal commitments and rights and agreements, such as the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement and the Senaklutik Agreement. It will include the protection of Inuit culture and their lands, educational, training, and employment opportunities for their youth, enhanced social programs and community infrastructure, and paramount to all else, ensuring controlled development of Nunavik's natural resources. In summary, Makivik Corporation and the subsidiary companies previously mentioned collectively employ over 2,000 people. In the case of Makivik alone, there are 107 employees, of which 68 are Inuit and 39 non-Inuit. The two airlines operate a combined fleet of 43 aircraft, providing passenger charter and cargo services within Nunavik and the pan-Canadian Arctic. September 2014 gross revenues in the transportation sector alone total $340 million. Notwithstanding the preceding, the developments of the region must be done in respect to the spirit and the letter of existing treaties, including the JBNQA, the NILCA, and the Senaklutik Agreement. Now you might ask why I provided all of this. I mean, around the table we have people from academia, from government, from the different nations that are party to this discussion on the round table. I wanted to make sure that people understood what Makivik does, what its history was, to bring to bear or to bring to the forefront what it is that we're dealing with historically and contemporarily. And there are people around the table here, board of directors from Makivik Corporation, such as Raymond and Luisa Tukaluk, that can speak much more to things of this nature, and I welcome their input on what I just said. I will, as Alan mentioned in his presentation, be going back to my employers, Makivik Corporation, to see in what way we may fit into this process that's being contemplated for Hudson Bay. And as Joel has said, This whole process has been around for a number of years. It's trying to decide on how it all can come together, who should be at the table, and what individual role we might be playing in it. Thank you for your attention. I know I've perhaps gone a little bit over in time, but I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much. Watch out. Nakumik.